Well, it's finally time. I've put this off long enough. I need to get this motor pulled, get that put over there. But a little easier said than done. I've got to move my steel rack first because I've been storing all my steel underneath this thing. I've got to drain all the fluids, coolant, oil, oil, get the lines, the shift linkage, radiator pulled out. I gotta unbolt this whole front clip. All this comes off. All these tubes, this X, this brace, this up here comes out, and then I should be able to pull the motor out of this thing. I guess it's time to find out if all this stuff works, because this is the first time I've ever had to pull this motor back out of this truck. So here we go. All right, well, I kind of got a motor in there. Kind of ran into, it looks like I'm gonna have to do a little bit more cutting on this cab. So you can actually see I want this motor to be a little higher, but I'm kind of hitting right there. I'm gonna have to clearance all of that out. The floor, the trans tunnel, I'm kind of hitting over on that side, so I'm gonna end up cutting this out. I'm gonna probably end up not using a factory floor, but I haven't cut all this out yet for the reason this cab isn't mounted in any way, and I don't wanna ruin any of the structural integrity of the cab right now. So I'll go in here and I'll have to pull this thing back out, make some clearance cuts to be able to get this motor. I want it a little bit further back. I'm really trying to get the front of this motor behind the rear pivot. On my C30 over there, I've got the front of the motor is about in the middle of the pivot, so about here. I would like to get it a little bit further back. And then also I need to get it a little bit higher. You can kind of see the trans pan on this frame here. I kind of want to get that trans pan up and above this frame so I can end up potentially doing a skid plate or something along those lines. Just get more clearance off the ground. My goal of this truck is to get it bumping when it's at full bump, a lot closer to the ground. So stuff like that, trans pan, oil pan, wanted to get up further. You can kind of see I cycled the beam, and the beam almost barely touches right now the way it is, and I'm gonna end up, these all got to get tons more plate, and the shape of these is gonna change dramatically. So I do need to get myself a little bit more clearance for the beam, but overall, just taking a look at it, first time setting a motor in there, it's kind of exactly what I'm looking for, so I'm pretty pumped about that. I've got to end up machining, you know, I took some measurements, so I was able to, I have to make some tabs for the motor mounts. I'm going to do pretty much the exact same thing that's on this truck. Some machine tabs you can see for the trans cross member. I run poly bushings at the end, and then poly bushings for the motor mounts as well. Those are the only poly bushings I run. Everything else is all rigid and welded to the chassis. It's all, there's no other poly or rubber anywhere else. You can see, check these boogery, nasty welds out. I'm sure somebody in the comments will have something to say about those, but you know what? That's completely fine by me. You know, this truck was built with 110 volt, like a Hobart 140 welder. And it is what it is. I built it in the garage, and it's been in there 3 years, and they still haven't cracked. So I don't really have a reason to cut them off and change them. I could, you know, my welding, I would say, has gotten, I'm at a slightly better level than when I started this. This is kind of the truck that I taught myself a lot of different things on. So they're not the prettiest thing, but they get the job done. The goal of this truck, though, is to make it pretty. So I definitely have a little bit higher standards going into this build. But it's nice to be able to actually show you guys that stuff that I haven't had any issues with, the poly bushings, those mounts. So I'm going to make the exact same style and set up over there. One thing I was going to show, this core support here, that was not removable. I made it removable. You can see I went in here and cut these. When I built that originally, I was planning on, whenever I pulled the motor the first time, I was probably going to have to cut them, and I did. I'm going to end up getting some, well, I'm going to probably actually just make them myself, some tube adapters to put in here and weld them in to be able to make that core support from now on removable from these 4 points. So that'll be able to pull on and off, and next time I have to do this, making that removable, I'll be able to keep the radiator and all that stuff hooked right to it. I'll just have to unhook radiator hoses, and I can then undo these 4 spots, and that whole thing will pull off with the radiator on it, all the mounts and all that stuff. So that'll be nice. Other than that, I had enough clearance, which was kind of cool. Barely, kind of had to shimmy by these things, but I was able to get it out with the trans bolted to the motor still, so that was the goal I was looking for. The other thing I was going to show you was this guy right here. I got a little bit of repair work to do. You can notice right here, this is the only part of the frame that I didn't box in, and partly because I couldn't get to it when the motor was in. Also, you can see these are the bolts for the steering box in here, the original frame location, stock location. And I ended up last season taking this drop out in our dunes here local to me in Michigan. It was like 5-6 foot drop just right off the edge. And a buddy of mine, Jesse Pigeon, might be able to notice any of his work. He's out in the dunes all the time. I have tons of pictures and videos of my truck thanks to him being out there all the time. But he was out there, told me about this drop, said it was sick. There was guys hitting it the weekend before. So I tried hitting it, and you can hear in the video, luckily he got video of it. So I'm going to put this in now so you can see it. But before, you can listen to the RPM of my engine. You can hear me get off the gas for like 2-3 seconds, and that's where I fucked up. It caused my truck to nosedive a little bit coming off this thing. I should have stayed pinned. I don't remember why I let off. It was a couple months ago now. But anyways, this is the result of that jump, which I'll put in right now. So you might be able to see in that video, there was a point, the truck was the front tires were hitting, and then all of a sudden the truck just snaps back. And that's the exact point that I hit right in there. So you can hopefully see with the straight edge on that skid plate just how caved in it is. But because of that, I've been wondering how easy all these intersecting tubes were gonna come out of here and go back in. And I'm actually surprised. You know, all of these up here were all good. These bolt holes still line up. This one, however, it looks like it tweaked this one up a little bit. You know, just the force that went into here breaking that. And the reason why it broke like that, if you can see in there, there's a piece of 1.5 inch tube sleeved in this. These were some scrap pieces. At the time when I made this whole front bumper, I was running really low on tube. I only had scrap little chunks. And this was a piece that I had 2 matching bends, so I was able to cut it and sleeve it and weld it, and then I ground the weld smooth and painted it to kind of make it look like one tube. And I don't know if that saved me or hurt me, but I almost think because it broke and blew that out, it actually didn't cause as much twist in here as I was expecting. These bolt holes right here are about like 3/16 of an inch off now, and this side is like an 1/8 inch off, and then all these ones all line up. So for how big of a hit that was, I'm not too disappointed. I'm gonna end up probably cutting these off and just redoing those. I'll probably cut this off, get this tube out of here, plate that in, cut this all out. Just stuff that comes with these things. If you're actually out driving these things and using them and not in your garage building them all the time, stuff like that happens and you gotta redo some of that stuff. So anyways, just showing some of the stuff from this truck. Mainly the engine mounts, the trans mounts, all that stuff is gonna be the same on this truck because really I haven't had any too issues. I may end up doing a little bit different style setup. You know, this isn't, I really don't think that's the best thing. The way that this is angled back, and you know, just all part of the learning curve with these things. You know, another thing is check out how nasty them welds are. Oh, there's some big old nasty boogers on there. You know, this is a truck that I pretty much taught myself to learn to weld on. You know, I get a lot of questions about where did you learn how to do this stuff? Where do you know, honestly, it's just getting in the garage and doing it, failing a bunch of times, and just redoing it over and over again until you get it right. Instances like that, I don't remember the exact reason of why those things look so shitty. But at the same time, they've been in there for 3 years and they haven't cracked and fallen off. So it's just something, you know, I'm probably not going to cut them off and redo them. They're fine for me. This truck, I do have a little bit higher standards for myself. You know, if I really started nitpicking all of the crap that I didn't like myself on that truck, you know, it'd never be done. And the thing's never done anyway. There's tons of stuff that I should be doing to that. But for me, it's just more fun, just keep on going and building more stuff and just trying to improve on it. And instead of trying to just constantly nitpick that thing apart, I'd rather just put those skills into another build, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. So, the only other thing I was going to bring up and cover is just some of the tooling and the things I'm using. This is pretty much, simply put, this is a Harbor Freight racing garage. Everything I have is pretty much Harbor Freight, super cheap, OEM parts. There's a lot of cool things out there that you can use and you can spend money on, but at the end of the day, for what I'm trying to do is trying to do a garage budget build. You know, I'm doing it pretty much the exact same way I did that truck, just one piece at a time, figuring it out, struggling through. Time to get that thing ready for the season. Keep progressing on this and building it over the summer, and keep bringing videos. Thanks for watching.